Fastline Auctions, the ultimate destination for online farm equipment auctions. Looking to list equipment? Fastline Auctions knows farmers, and farmers have trusted Fastline for their equipment needs for over 45 years. With unmatched digital reach and direct-to-farmer catalogs, they can find the right buyer for your equipment. Not to mention, they have the industry's lowest commission rates. If you're looking for equipment to buy, you can bid with confidence. No buyer premiums, no reserves, just integrity. Fastline Auctions, your trusted platform for hassle-free, cost-effective farm equipment auctions. Visit fastline.com for more information. That's fastline.com.
Stories behind the ag brands we love and the ag brands we love to hate. What color is your tractor? With Chrissy Wozniak.
I'm Chrissy Wozniak, and welcome to What Color is Your Tractor? My guest is the senior brand manager of a very well-known ag brand. He plays a critical role in the development of the go-to-market strategy across North America. He grew up farming in Northeast Nebraska and started his career with AGCO in 2006 as a Challenger big equipment specialist. From there, he held many positions within AGCO, including marketing for Challenger HHP tractors, product management for Massey Ferguson tractors, product management for Valtra tractors, and global marketing lead for Ideal combine launches in Europe, South, and North America. Today, we're going to learn about the past and present, and a bit about the future of this great company, and explore the exciting future of this particular brand. From Dawsonville, Georgia, I'd like to welcome Brandon Montgomery of the great company Fendt. Welcome, Brandon, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Wow, thank you so much. I really appreciate being on the show here today. So thank you for the time.
Yeah, I'm excited. So let's start out. Tell me a bit about your background and history with AGCO and with the Fendt brand.
So thank you for the bio there too. That was kind of summed up a lot of it. I did come from Northeast Nebraska. My family, we grew corn and soybeans, had a small cow-calf operation, and really went into agriculture and a university role into South Dakota State University, and really started with AGCO, really first job out of the company, out of college, and been with AGCO ever since. So really that journey with inside a company, it's always nerve-wracking trying to find a job outside of, college, and where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Trying to answer all those questions it's a company I've been with since 2006 and have loved every minute of it. I've had the pleasure of working many different roles inside AGCO as a whole. And that started, like you mentioned, with the Challenger side of high horsepower equipment with the Challenger tractors, wheel tractors, and combines. And then that journey took me through many areas inside of AGCO within marketing, product marketing, into tractor development within product management. And that led over to overseas roles with inside AGCO, actually working for Valtra out of Finland, and then moved to Braganza, Italy, where our Ideal combines are produced, and then finally came back and landed here in North America again in 2020, and now the proud role and sponsor of Fendt in North America is the brand lead. So it's been quite a journey here, Chrissy, with inside AGCO. I would never have guessed that many opportunities existed, but extremely proud to represent Fendt for North America as part of a huge growing brand inside of the global theme of farming equipment.
Right, yeah. And that's really remarkable. Your career path is really extraordinary. And I always like to point that out because a lot of youth getting into agriculture, they don't realize the paths that you can go on when you decide on a career in agriculture, and look at all the travel, all the places, all the experiences that this has taken you over the last 17 years. It's really amazing.
I grew up really, there was an Ash Falls fossil bed in Northeast Nebraska, and there was a 1420 drive-in where two highways met, and there was a big burger restaurant there I never thought I'd make it further than that. So to go
Wow.
actually live, multiple areas of the U.S. and travel overseas and live overseas has been nothing but a dream. So it's my wife and I talk about it all the time. It's how did that happen? What led us there? How did we make that work? And it's been a true adventure. And every bit of the way you learn something new that's really, completing the pieces of the puzzle that I'm just thankful to see, look in the rearview mirror and go, wow, that's been so much fun. So super thankful for AGCO to give us those opportunities and really accelerate. So anybody coming in, from the youth, thinking about jobs, there's these companies are there to help you. And they want to see you grow. You just got to be willing to try.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so.
And so you were raised in farming then?
Yep, my mom and my dad, we grew corn and soybeans. My grandparents farmed as well as their grandparents did too. My wife and her family, they can trace it back to the early 1800s in South Dakota. So we met in college in South Dakota, and her family still farms there as well in a little town called Eureka, South Dakota. And so what we thought is growing up, farming wasn't such a big deal, but it's such a big deal of our daily lives. So we talk about it all the time, maybe more than what my wife would like to, listen to all the time, because I talk about so much equipment all the time. But it's what you love, it's what you do, right? So it's definitely part of our DNA and our blood.
Oh, that's awesome. And so why did you choose to continue to serve the industry? Like when you decided to go to school, what was it?
That's a great question. I went into agriculture. My background there at South Dakota State was ag systems technology. I knew I wanted to serve in agriculture, but wasn't sure. So it was a great way to lead into many different areas because it touched on the mechanical side of equipment, hydraulics, electronics, but also, at that time frame in early 2000s was really getting in the technology side with auto steer.
Right.
So we really had the opportunity to see something that was up and coming with that level of technology. But we also touched on sustainability, how to make farms, really run to the next generation and with the least amount of input costs, but really do a better job for our planet and our soil types. So you touched on so many areas. I didn't think that all of that would come into place where we're at right now. And when you look at a career now, so that South Dakota State University, they gave me an opportunity really to explore the bigger picture. And then, of course, you're trying to find a job out of college to pay the bills. So the role with AGCO came up, and I found pretty quickly that with the service-minded attitude, the customers inside agriculture are so awesome. Like everybody inside this business, just if you help them, they are friends for life, and they will bend over backwards to help support you. And I learned that pretty quickly early on in my career is if you just go the extra mile and you really are service minded, like there's nothing going to stop you in terms of growing your business. And that's what really draw me to it, and what's kept me inside of agriculture. The conservative nature of our farmers, they care about their communities. They serve their communities at such a high level on who they're hiring. They're down to earth. They just make what we do enjoyable, and I don't think you find that anywhere else in a lot of industries out there. So it was just naturally, I feel connected to it, and it's just a really great place to be inside this ag business.
Yeah, that was so eloquent. I love that. That's like, that'll be a cut for sure that we promote this episode with, because that just is beautiful the way that you said that. And it's so true. It really rounds out what so many people in the industry are and how we feel about it, right?
They really are awesome.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the early years of Fendt now. In 1930, the Fendt company was founded by Xavier Fendt in Toberdorf, Germany. So can you tell me about those early days?
So something you may not actually know about Fendt and kind of where it started. I've got this history book in front of me here to kind of point out a few things, but the family actually started, it can be traced back to the 15th century, right in Bavaria. That's, if you're frameworking, you've never been over to Germany before, that is the place where they still wear lederhosens today, right? It's a big festival with Oktoberfest. You think of the big steins beer, that's right where this Fendt brand really started and started to live. Something a lot of our audience members may not know is that Sylvester Fendt was a master metal worker and tower clock maker. So he moved to the village in 1635, and it was later named Markt Toberdorf later after that. But they actually started off building clocks for churches and windows. They were master craftsmen at metalwork. They did a lot of work in the churches themselves, ornate, beautiful. I mean, you're talking iron steel jobs that you just don't see anymore, right? Those were the family that were master craftsmen. That's what they did. But they recognized, as secularism was starting to take place, they knew fewer churches were starting to be built. So they were having to kind of switch gears themselves. And you talk about farmers having to make a shift, to stay, in the game and pass it down to the next family. Well, they realized they had to make a shift. And that's where they really started to get into agriculture itself. And they really branched off into more mechanical side, which eventually led to the first Fendt diesel Ross tractors, 1926. They started really with mass production in 1930. So that's a little bit of background, in the Fendt world itself. And that's, today that is still the home of Fendt, Magdeburg.
Wow.
So what it was in those early 1900s, tracing back to the early 1600s, what seems for us as American, a really long time ago, they can trace that lineage so far back. And I think that's something that's really unique about Fendt, is having that DNA as part of the start of who they are. And it's still in that DNA. You live and breathe it as you travel there. It's such a special place, inside of this big world that we live in, but you really make it localized when you have kind of that background, and they're still in some of the same buildings that they were back in, 1926 as they are today. So that's a little bit about the early, journey of Fendt as it got started.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned the Fendt Diesel Ross. It's often mentioned as a significant innovation of its time. So can you explain how this tractor impacted the ag machinery industry at that time?
So the Diesel Ross machine, it really started off, the word Diesel Ross itself, let's take that as part of the understanding. That's the logo, right? It was really farmers going from, horse-drawn implements, plows, and some tillage to Diesel Ross being actually, something that runs on diesel as a horsepower, right? So it's transitioned from a big innovation in itself, going from horse to a mechanical device to do the same type of job. That in itself is a major innovation in the world, right? So, they were not the only tractor manufacturer, but they were one of the first for sure inside of all of Europe to really invent the tractor and start from that journey. What was kind of interesting with them, they had, from the very beginning, applications in mind. So they started off not just with a traditional tractor, but they had more of like the applications you would be doing typically with a horse, pulling carts, pulling wagons, moving items around on the farm itself. How do you get from point A to point B, and pulling plows? So that what the traditional, how they pioneered into the diesel Ross looked a little bit different. They had steel wheels, they had implements in front and back underneath. So they were trying to figure out where do we actually land as something we can commercialize. So there were some early mock-ups that led into that 1930 with really starting into the diesel Ross tractor. And it took off ever since from there.
Yeah. And something that's so fascinating is, we've got thousands of years of documented history, and all of this has happened in 100 years.
That's right.
Like, it's just mind blowing to think how somebody in their 80s looking back just must shake their head trying to understand how this all happened, right? It's almost one lifetime, right?
We'll talk about that too, because I know it'll come up later too. But I think we're kind of on a similar revolution. You think about going from a horse to a tractor and the colors, right? We're in that same journey now, 100 years later, of looking at what that next journey is. And that, I know we'll talk about that later, but we're kind of at that cusp where things are going to look a lot differently in the future too.
Yeah, it's hard to even imagine something that you can't imagine. Like the quote from Henry Ford, that if he had asked the customers what they wanted, they just would have wanted a faster horse.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
And we don't even know what to ask for.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so the four-wheel drive tractors became a hallmark of Fendt with the introduction of the Favorite. How did this innovation change the landscape of tractor technology at the time?
Actually the first four-wheel drive tractor was the Fendt 25A. It was actually sold in 1950 to 52. So that was even before the Fendt Favorite model was actually produced. It was a 15 horsepower, single cylinder engine. And that was really something that was ahead of its time, because not many tractor manufacturers, if ever, had anything before then to really bring the power to the ground, give them the extra capacity out of a small horsepower engine. They could do even more with it. So that was a revolution before it even came to the Fendt Favorite model. Just going through a couple of my notes here, the Fendt Favorite model was actually produced in the 60s. So we're talking about 15 years ahead of that even.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I did not even know that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And then if we fast forward the 90s to 1997, Fendt's acquisition by AGCO Corporation marked a significant milestone. So how did the partnership influence Fendt's growth and product development?
It's an interesting time period, because, you look at AGCO's acquisition of Fendt, right? So that was really the late 90s, 97, AGCO acquired Fendt brand. Just 2 years ahead of that, though, was the first CVT transmission. That was the Vario transmission. That's what really put Fendt on the map. So I do want to talk a little bit about that first before we go into the journey, how it came into North America. But that transmission took really 10 years to develop. So they were in the workings of what that transmission had to look like. And if you could sum up Fendt really in a couple words, it's really that mentality of never giving up. And the inventors of that transmission knew there was a better way to transfer power. They had worked on, different gearboxes, mechanical gearboxes, which you would say is like a crash gearbox. You've got to basically clutch, stop, mesh the gears in, and then let the clutch off and go, to sliding clutches, constant mesh gears where they can shift on the go, to, liquid clutches that they could actually shift under load, under torque. And they knew that there was a better way to do that job. Everybody since then has tried to imitate what Fendt has done with that CVT. And if you think about the way the mechanics work, combining hydrostatic power with mechanical power of a hydraulic pump and motor, controlling a ring gear around a planetary set. It seems so simple. It's like, well, why didn't anybody else do that? I mean, it is so brilliant. You've got infinite speeds, and you can control your speed independent of your transmission to match any speed for the job. And that was so far ahead of its time, right? So you've got this innovation coming in where the company itself has put in a lot of money and investment into it. And shortly behind that, you got this American company buying, Fendt. So that was a big talk in Germany, especially Robert Ratliff that formed AGCO. He was, I call myself kind of a Gen 2er AGCO, maybe moving into a little bit of a Gen 3, where I've seen Robert Ratliff walk around inside the Duluth office. He lived here. He ate at Taco Mac, with a lot of the charter members that started AGCO. We'd see him down at Taco Mac, and very friendly, talkative. But he built this company, around that late 1996 and 97 of how are we going to tackle this building a full line. And they knew what was so cool. When they saw that CVT, they knew that it was something they knew it was going to take off. And I think it's extraordinary to find people that have that vision, that know it, that is something that's going to revolutionize the industry. To be able to take that and actually acquire a brand like Fendt that's ahead of its time, I think is just marvelous. That's very rare to have that vision and foresight. And I think Robert Ratliff did that. So sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but I forgot the original part of the question. I get lost in that because I admire people that have that vision to find that out. And then how did they actually buy it and acquire it? The talk.
Yeah, that's it. So how did that develop from there? So where did it go from him to AGCO?
It took some time, right? So, here we are in 2023, and, that was over 20 years ago. We started with the Fendt brand coming into North America, shortly after that, right? So we knew, like, okay, this is something nobody else has. How do we get into North American farmers' hands too? And in Europe, it was really starting to take off. It was ramping up. The brand was very well known, it was very popular, very mature in the industry. But for North America, it was a starter. It was a no-name brand, right? Nobody knew who it was really, unless you had some German heritage. And I'm going to tell you a story about my first interaction with that too. When I started with AGCO, 2006, I was at one of the first jobs I had was setting up for this national training event down in Phoenix, Arizona. And this is the first time I ever even driven a tractor. It was a Challenger tractor that we had there. It had CVT transmission in it. And the guys were telling me, like, well, that's a Fendt CVT transmission. He said, do you know how to drive it? I said, sure, I know how to drive tractors. I've been driving tractors forever, so I can drive this. Well, I couldn't even make it go. So
oh, wow.
The guy said, you just shuttle into reverse and push that little pedal like you would drive a car. And I did that and backed up to the sunflower tillage equipment that we had that we're trying to set up. And he goes, yep, if you want to stop, just hit the brakes. And I did that. And it was like an instant feeling of, this is unbelievable. How do people not know this? How do people, it's a transfer of feelings that you can't just get by talking about it, right? You have to get in the seat and drive it. And I spent the rest of the afternoon just driving that tractor, getting familiar with it. And I was telling everybody I knew about this. I'm like, have you tried this? Can you believe that this does? And, not as many people are as excited about it as I was, I guess. But, when you try something so different and so unique, it just changes everything about, what you think about farming and agriculture. And I think that's what Fendt has done. Now, it's taken 25 years to really grow that history inside North America. But really over the last 4 years, 5 years, that's where it's accelerated. So it's accelerated even more as the tractor range is growing from like a full line. We look at 94 horsepower up to 670 horsepower. That's a massive line. I think there's actually 42 tractor models that we've got. To adding on the Momentum planter, we've got the Fendt Ideal combine, we've got the Fendt Rogator, and you talk about a whole package of offering. Now farmers are looking at us as a whole systems approach, and not just a short line of, say, tractors, for example. That's where we're going. So it's taken a long time to get there, right? People don't change their minds overnight. Even the broadcast of your show, what color your tractor is, a lot of people talk about the colors of their tractor.
Exactly.
And it's deeply rooted in their DNA, right? So it's taken a long time, but we're now on that cusp of really making huge growth as we have over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. And the emphasis on technology and innovation is really evident throughout the whole history, and especially in the last 20 years. Can you discuss some of these key technological milestones that have helped Fendt stay at the forefront of the industry and not get lost in all of the new developments, new technology of the main colors?
So that DNA of never giving up, really going into that CVT transmission just sets the tone for all of the other innovations to come.
Right.
And I think that's what makes Fendt so unique, is that that's transferred into not just Montgomery, but it's transitioned into the other sites that where we manufacture the planters, the combine, and the sprayers. So some of those innovations, we have, for example, we produced over 350,000 of the CVT transmissions, for example. Wow. We were one of the first to develop cab suspension. I think Fendt tractors are so well known for its comfort features, cab, ride quality. So we've got over 38 years of experience in cab suspension, as well as front axle suspension, one of the first on the market with front axle suspension. You look back at the transition from analog to digital on electronics. They were also one of the first to really come to market with CAN bus control technology, how that engine, transmission, electronics all talk to each other. One of the other ones of innovations was pressure flow compensated hydraulics. Not too many knew what that was, and the ability to have hydraulics on demand versus an open center system. That's a big movement as well. Fendt was inside of there too. Another one is the first tractor virtual terminal. So it controls all the tractor functions and the implement. So if you think about Isobus, Fendt is one of the first ones to offer Isobus control. Many of the farmers listening to this will think about, hydraulic couplers and tips and how many times they've changed, different manufacturers on hydraulics, for example. The same thing happened with terminals and monitors too, right? So we have one of the first abilities as Fendt to offer that up, where any implement with Isobus could show up on your terminal and display without needing the original monitor to control that. Pretty quickly, you could have 4, 5, 6 monitors inside your cab. So one of the first ones on the market with that. Exhaust braking, trailer braking, hydraulic braking, that's, was driven mainly by regulations. But I think what Fendt did is they innovated around those regulations to bring new technology to market. So especially in Europe, they use a lot of air ride brakes for their implements to make sure that they're safe. There's high population, which are dense around villages and cities. So they definitely had to be very safe with their equipment, because they use those tractors as their semi-truck. So there's not many, Ford F-250s, Super Duty diesels running down the highways pulling trailers. It's a Fendt 200, a Fendt 300, Fendt 500 pulling the trailers. So they have to be safe in terms of what they're doing. What that led to was an example of Vario grip. That's something nobody else has. So that's an integrated, tire pressure system inside the tires that inflates and deflates. So on the go. Now, if you have the compressors for your air brakes, well, you use the same compressors for your tire system.
Wow.
So in the field, you can let the tire pressure down, get a better grip, have lower soil compaction. But on the road, you can pump them up, have less rolling resistance, and get better fuel efficiency. So those are like all the little golden nuggets that really help leveraging something that was a regulation to really make it an advantage for the farmer. And then there's so many other, you think outside of just the tractor with some of the industry first on the combine, for example, with ideal drive, there's no steering wheel inside of it. The auto dock capability where you can disconnect and connect to the header without getting outside of the cab to do it. It's all from the cab.
Yeah.
Load logic system on the momentum planter where it transfers the weights to each of the independent sections of the frame. Liquid logic making the recirculation of the booms better and easier clean out of the booms. So anyway, that's just part of the DNA. That the list goes on and on and on. But that's where that innovation and really leaders pushing Fendt, driving Fendt, I think comes to play as you see that as our portfolio starts to grow. It's not just a Me Too product. It's a product really driven around farmers' needs and innovating around that as it goes.
Yeah, that's it. It's clear from what you're saying that Fendt is farmer first, especially talking about isobus. That's a huge benefit or a huge leap forward in making things easier for repairs, for everything. And in everything that you just listed there, it was farmer first.
It's part of our motto as well, even from our directive of our CEO, Eric Hansodia today, it's farmer first. If you were to come here to Duluth and walk in the atrium, you see farmer first everywhere. And it's really driving that mentality into all of our employees of listening to the farmers. What do they need? You said earlier too, like with Henry Ford, if, I would have made a faster horse, but when you listen to them and you have listened to their farmers and our growers and understand the challenges that they have, that's where it allows you to really invent and think differently outside the box. I think that's what Fendt has done such a phenomenal job at doing, better than anybody else. It's staying connected. Many of our employees farm themselves. You think about where Montgomery is, it's all ag production around there. Many of them farm on the sides. They use the products themselves, and they're constantly thinking and trying to make it better. So it is farmer first, and I think that's what sets us apart differently from many other manufacturers out there today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the global presence and the market reach, they've really expanded, obviously, from Germany around the whole world. And that can't be easy. How did the company navigate the challenges and opportunities of operating in such diverse agricultural markets?
So when you talk about, there's a difference from going to an international company to a global company. So an international company is somebody that sells the product just over a different country or a different continent, right? But it's one for one. But if you're really going to globalize your brand, you have to meet the demands of that region or area that you're really trying, to grow into, right? So let's take, for example, the 1000 series tractor. I think this is one of the biggest revolutions that happened inside agriculture, the Fendt 1000 series, a 500 horsepower fixed frame tractor. Well, in Europe, that is, it's popular. There's not many articulated tractors on the market there, mainly due to road width restrictions. You can't have a big, massive, dualed up, tripled up, articulated four-wheel drive down the highway. you'd stop traffic behind everybody, and you would have everybody honking and blinking their lights at you. So you have to think differently. How do we get that horsepower into a fixed frame design that can go up and down the highway? Well, that changed the ball game here, Chrissy, for North America and South America. And they knew that to grow, they had to really go after the markets that had large ag that were going to be expanding and growing the most. And that Fendt 1000 series is I think one of the best examples of that. That transmission is massive on what it can deliver in terms of power to the ground. And you combine that with the front axle technology that they have, combined with the low engine rev technology of, nobody else runs at 1350 RPM, right? That's where our peak torque is. Most peak torque on engines going to run about 1800, 1850, sometimes drop down to 1700, but nobody's ever doing it at 1350 RPM, burning 9 to 10 gallons an hour. That's just an example of how this machine has revolutionized that. And we're expanding from what was a tractor line to a full line. Well, if you think about full line row crop farmers, it is the pair. It's the tractor, the planter, the combine, the sprayer, and the tillage equipment around that, right? So that's where Fendt has really expanded and really taking Fendt to the next level. It's not just, hey, this is what we traditionally do here and try to sell that product into the other market. It's no, let's really understand the market. What are their needs? And we're going to develop products for that market that's really going to help that farmer out. And we see that in all parts of our Fendt full line that we have today that we didn't have, 10 years ago.
Yeah. And, just looking back, you can see that the mindset, those points all really added to the success. It's really, really remarkable. And then looking ahead, what are some of the anticipated directions and innovations that Fendt might pursue in continuing to serve the needs of the modern farmer?
You may have seen it. We had some news publications out. We were on a live working farm middle of June into Kentucky. And this is where, it was late June, first week of July, where we brought some of our media, our dealers, and our board members to the field in Kentucky. And we said, you know what, we're not going to just talk about some of these future things. We're going to actually show you. And this is what led, I talked about earlier, the revolution of going from horse-drawn implements to a tractor. That was such a huge deal. Yeah. 100 years later, where we are today, we're showing the path forward towards, our equipment as a standalone item is fantastic. Yes. But we really showed the systems approach solution. I'll touch on that a little bit later, to going from automating what an operator would normally do with their tasks, that we can mimic, we can make easier and comfortable for the operator, to now pulling that operator out of the cab. So we were showing some of the autonomous pieces of equipment there on the farm, and that we're not there commercially ready today, but it gave, I think, so many people there the chance to see it. You've been hearing it everywhere. You've been seeing it, snippets here and there. But it's rare to find it running in the application. And when you see a combine harvesting with an operator in it, and it pushes a button to call a tractor that nobody is in it with a grain cart, pull up next to the combine and unload on the go, that is something that just gives you chills up your spine. You go, wow, okay, now I see the benefit of it, because autonomy in itself is not, it's challenging. There are technological challenges, but you think about, even growing up the farm, a lot of family farms are, husband and wife farming, or husband and son, or husband and daughter farming, where just labor is always an issue, right? So if a lot of times, I think, one farmer told me, he said, if I had this technology in my farm, I'd still be farming today. And whereas now they've exited out of the farm because, okay, well, dad was running the combine, the son was running the semi trailer. So dad would harvest with the combine, fill up, drive to the semi trailer or the gravity wagon, unload. Son would be then taking it either to the elevator or to the storage bins. Well, if you think about how much time you lose in an operation, especially when you're trying to get all that crop out, it just extends your harvest season.
Yeah.
And therefore you can't do the other things that you need to do, like tillage, like, filling your contracts. And that one piece would have revolutionized their farm for sure by keeping the combine up and running up and down the field today. Well, there's huge operations that, they're running 6, 7 combines, running, 7, 8, 10, 12 semi trucks. You cannot stop. You have to keep going all the time. And that's what we brought to life, just a sliver of what autonomy can bring to the full picture. And we're in that mode right now of making this a big leap again in the future. And it's so exciting because I think nobody else like Fendt can really lead that way. I think we've got some of the best DNA inside of our company, AGCO, supporting every bit of that. And some of the acquisitions that we've made recently, we're in such a good spot to really provide for our farmers something sustainable. And I'll finish here on this point with sustainability. We talk a lot about, carbon neutral footprint. We talk about, what we can do for better soil, but a lot of times sustainability for our farmers and thinking about farmer first is, how are they going to hand that off to the next generation? And I think that's what makes it sustainable with the technology that we're doing is we're actually helping these farmers think about generational plans to keep it in the family and move on to the next generation. So the future could not be any more exciting than it is right now.
Yeah, great points. And continuing on with sustainability, with fewer farms, feeding more people, farming has to be so efficient. So you've outlined some of these places, but more specifically, what is Fendt doing to tackle those particular issues going forward?
There's a host of items for sure. You talk about carbon neutral footprint. You talk about many corporate initiatives, but I'll keep what I'm going to talk about mainly farmer focused, right? So some of the things on that we're doing are around engine technology. So if we think about what we showed, even in Kentucky there about a little over a month ago was electrification. So we had a Fendt E100 there. It's right at almost 100 horsepower, fully electric tractor. It had all the working mechanics of what a normal tractor would do in terms of the transmission, front axle, front PTO, rear PTO, climate control inside the cab, but just instead of an engine, it had a battery box. But rather than forcing our customers into one path in one direction, we said, okay, well, what else can we do that gives them a lot of flexibility? So we're still continuing on the path of different alternative sources as well, like biogas, for example. So if you're running compressed natural gas from a biomethane digester that you may have on the farm, for example, running alternative fuels, synthetic fuels, biofuels, even into hydrogen fuel cells as well. Those are some around the other technologies that we're investing in and trying to give our farmers multiple options rather than just trying to force them into one area specifically. That generates flexibility. And as a global company, you have to be, you can't just say we're going to do this because the market in that country may not even be ready for it, for example. So we're driving flexibility when it comes to power sources in terms of sustainability. And then on top of that, we're always looking at ways to make our vehicles more efficient. So that way our farmers can realize the return on the investment faster. that low engine rev technology, that's a big deal. If you're saving 10 gallons an hour versus a competitor, that's a big gap. Fuel prices continue to climb up. It makes a big difference. So we're always looking for ways to make even what we have today even more efficient in the traditional sense.
Yeah, that's great. And some more present day challenges. How have you addressed the supply chain breakdowns over the last 2-3 years now? And what have you learned from those?
I think everybody's faced that. Nobody was, not feeling that pressure. Supply chain challenges were a big deal. We're in a global economy now. It's not just about one region versus another region. Everybody's susceptible to that. The war in Ukraine, for example, halted a lot of things where maybe some of your supply sources could be coming from eastern part of Europe or even into Asia, for example. So that hurt many OEMs, not just agriculture, but car manufacturers. Everybody felt that pressure. I think one thing that really separated us maybe from our competitors, and I'm going to go off a couple stories that I've heard in the marketplace. What made us different? We did something different. We said, you know what? Even though we as Fendt and we as AGCO have supply chain challenges, we're still going to support our customers that bought our equipment first. So what we said is, you know what? If you're a customer of ours and you have a breakdown and it's the same piece that you could get maybe out of the factory, rather than trying to build that machine out of the factory and delivering it, we said, you know what, let's support that customer first. So we did end up pulling some parts out of the factory, for example, to support those critical need times when labor is highly intensive and you have to plant, you have to harvest, for example, to make sure that customer's satisfied and going. And I've heard stories where that hasn't been the case with some of our competitors. Were more focused on delivering a new machine, but the customer that's out there in the fields waiting on that part for 2, 3, 4 weeks. So that doesn't help them out any to get the job done. And I think that's something that really separated us just from a fundamental mindset of customer first, farmer first, of doing something different that generates a lot of value. And I think that'll come, maybe you don't know that today, but our listeners to this should really take that to heart, that we are farmer first. And that's just an example to prove that out.
Yeah, that's it. That's a great example for sure. Yeah, you would think, you would imagine a major corporation would be, let's get another one off the line, not let's pull the pieces and keep a farmer running. That's amazing. I haven't heard that anywhere else. Yeah, very cool. And then let's shift over to the branding portion. Why do you think tractor color has meant so much to so many generations of farmers?
Tractor color is something interesting. We talked about this at the very beginning, right? So, even the ag industry talks about, what color is in your shed, for example. Everybody relates to the famous colors that are out there. I think it's deeply rooted in heritage and DNA. I look at my own father-in-law and his father before him. They owned and run a specific color for many generations. It's what they knew. It's what they trusted on. It's what I think got them through some tough times. Agriculture, you live and breathe the soil, the dirt, the community, the surrounding, around that, right? So the difference between, say, an automobile dealer versus an ag dealer, an automobile dealer can sell a car, a truck, and shut down at 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. The ag dealer, if that farmer is not getting the performance they need or they're down, the dealer is going to be one of the first ones they call. And you talk about the stresses of agriculture in general, when you've got, you know, interest rates on the climb, and even talking, 20, 30 years ago when interest rates were super high, people couldn't afford to make their payments. Land prices were super high. Their net farm income was super low. They were stressed. They were trying to, just wake up and do the job that they could to feed the world. You become more than just a dealer. You become somebody that is like I don't know, I call it a family member in a way. And I think that's what's really made it different. It's hard to put it into words, but you depend on somebody because you have to depend on them. And I think that's transferred into the color of the equipment that they run, because when they tell stories at the coffee shop and they're like, you know what, this happened to me, and it doesn't matter what color machine it breaks down, but the dealer did this and it took care of me that way. The company took care of me that way. They become loyal, and they know that they're going to be there tomorrow, and they know that that's going to help serve them in the years to come and make sure that they can be sustainable and pass it down to the next generation. Nobody's ever really said it in words, maybe to that level. I may be jumping to some conclusions there, but I feel that that's why it's so important. It's more than just a business transaction. It is something so deeply rooted into the fact of people caring, wanting them to succeed. And when that happens, they really become loyal to that brand, and just know that they care, because it's not that many people that are farming, really feeding our world. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that is very well said. And I couldn't agree more. And why do you know why most of the brands chose one color, but Fendt has two? Is there a story behind that, or a reason? Do you know why?
Are you talking with the wheels?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's some conjecture there, on what we think. Now, if you've ever flown into Montgomery, and I learned this from a colleague of mine. So you got the nature green color on the hood, the fenders, and then you've got the Terra red wheels. When you fly into Montgomery or Munich, for example, and you drive into Montgomery, it's so green, it's so bright green, just the fields themselves,
Really?
with that Bavarian style, it's a lot of hay, it's a lot of livestock. So you see this green. So I think a lot of it comes just from unknowingly, like, okay, this is just part of who we are. And then a lot of the homes actually have this terracotta red color on top of the roof. So I think part of it is that way. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that that's part of the inner workings of their stories, that this nature green, it's part of who we are, it's where we're from, but then you get this mix of the red, has such a nice contrast. And that's what is deeply rooted into Fendt, for example. But I don't know that for 100% fact. It's not real.
Yeah, that does make sense. I like that there's an answer. I know that's what people bring up, right?
It is, yeah. And Fendt, just even their new logo, it's kind of like in a half moon shape, right? And then there's a line through it. Mm-hmm. And what that line symbolizes is where Earth meets the sky. Oh, wow. So our Fendt team, Montgomery, the ones that been working their generations, have told us, they're so committed to agriculture, our farmers, that this is just part of their DNA. It's who they are, right? So that Fendt nature green color and that Terra red wheels, it does have a lot of symbolization, and you can point it out from miles away. Looking on the highway, you can see, oh yeah, that's a Fendt. I know it is. It makes it stand out for sure.
Definitely, for sure. And you mentioned this before with fewer farms. Something I hear when I sit with salespeople in the industry, it means that there's fewer decision makers, right? Because there's fewer farms, more maybe same acres, but it's not like there's 10 farmers in one area, so that's 10 different colors. So what is brand loyalty? What role does it play in this new era where there are fewer farmers, fewer decision makers?
That it's an interesting question because I see that side, but I also see the complications of actually generational planning too, where a lot of family farms are forming LLCs, where
Yeah.
maybe they're farming the same acreage and size, but now farms have kind of split up and maybe one's managing it, but then you have different owners inside the same um, farm itself. And that presents a challenge, right? Because then everybody has kind of like a board, a voice of, well, what do you buy? What do you purchase inside of this farm? So you got more of the traditional route, but then you also have kind of like a more of a corporate feel to it as well too. And that presents a challenge. I think what more so than today than ever is that with the challenges of farming, that net farm income is they're simply looking for a partner in the business that cares to make sure they have a return on their investment. And I think that's where
That's key.
Fendt is really coming into play more than anybody else right now, is that the things that we do to make that return on the investment known, people are going, okay, I get it. I get it now why you got low engine rev technology, because yeah, I'm spending a ton of money on fuel. I get why you're focused on your combine with residue management spread, for example, to have an even residue spread, because my emergence in the spring with my planter is that much better. You know, I get it now. Ideal combines, why you did that. I get why now the momentum planter is, able to push out 5 to 6 bushels more per acre than a competitor with precision row units on the same. It's not the same technology. It's how that technology works as a system. So with our load logic system on the planter, having less compaction, getting the row units down where they need to be, we've seen that increase. And then you say, okay, well, I get Fendt why you're making a 2-in-1 sprayer now, where I can get my pre-emerge and then a little bit of post-emerge with corn and soybeans, but now you're able to allow me to do spray fungicide late season application in corn. Wow, now I can really get a return on my investment, which when you add all that up, that's where I think, more so than anybody is really looking for that partner to help them realize that return on their investment and make sure it works for their operation. That's a big deal. So I think that's what Fendt's doing better than anybody else right now.
Yeah, that's really great. And then with on kind of the other hand of things, I hear big corporations are buying up a lot of the small standalone manufacturers. It happens all the time. And now there seems to be, 3 or 4 big corporations who own most of the brands, most of the colors. So that gives more challenges to the companies in how do they keep brand loyalty when they have this brand and marketing dollars are funneling down. How are they navigating that, where we need brand loyalty in all of these areas, even though we're competing?
Yeah, it's not so hard. I think it's you're going to have that, right? So we've seen that over the ag industry since conception, really. Alice Chalmers, Cockshoot, Oliver White, all of these things that have morphed into where we're at today. I think when a brand wins with brand loyalty, it really comes down to the ability for them to support them when they are in need. And anybody can make a piece of equipment, but if you don't have the support behind it to keep them going, that's not going to last long at all. So it doesn't matter if you bought somebody else, if you can't support in the field, you're not going to win out there. They may buy you once, but they won't buy you again. So I think when it comes to brand loyalty, building that up, we spend, quite a bit of money getting the name out there. And we're doing a good job. Our customers are cheering us on. They want another competitor out there to compete against some of the bigger ones too. But I think being service minded, being humble, being somebody that really cares about their farm, their fields, and their future growth, I think, is what separates a brand versus somebody that's just in the business to make money just for the steel and iron it is. That's where we're going to win, and I think that's where we're headed. That makes us different and unique to grow that loyalty than somebody else out there.
Yeah, good points. And as the brand manager, what technical things are you doing to expand the brand and expand market share?
One of the biggest things that we're doing right now, in terms of building the brand itself, is we've put a stake in the ground. So the stake in the ground is our Fendt home for North America. So we definitely, if you think Fendt globally, we've got lots of different manufacturing facilities in Europe, some in Brazil, even a couple here in North America within Jackson, Minnesota, and Heston, Kansas, and we've got our parts warehouses there near Chicago, Batavia. But we've put a stake in the ground, and it's a major stake. We've said, you know what, Fendt North America home is going to be in Jackson, Minnesota, and that's where we produce traditionally the tractors and the rogator sprayers and the Terragator ag chem equipment. And that is now transitioning into our Fendt home for North America, where it'll be completely remodeled. It's going to be fantastic. It's really going to be our showcase where you learn more about Fendt, the brand itself, what makes Fendt Fendt, and you have a positive experience, but also to do internal trainings. We can host events, and we can also bring guests in from outside the industry to really learn and know what Fendt is. And that's just one example. That's a major investment. Right. We're really growing with our farmers. We're definitely attending every farm show we definitely can. We're growing in our advertisements as well too. And you see the growth in our dealers. The number of dealers that we have is continuing to grow. We've got some strong initiatives with them in terms of market share, and they're hungry for it because they know it's out there. There's such a large underserved group of farmers out there that we know we can serve and provide a great value for them. So when you add all this up, we've seen triple digit growth numbers the last couple of years, and that projection is going to keep going that path. We do the right things, it's going to keep going the right path.
Yep. Yeah. It sounds like you're on the right path. Mm-hmm. And how do you, when somebody sees that logo, sees that tractor, how do you as brand manager want them to see? What do you want them to feel?
When they see the Diesel Ross logo on the front hood of their tractor or sprayer or combine, or Momentum, for example, I want them to know that Fendt is a leader in technology. We're going to make that return on the investment, and we're going to deliver to our promises. And when you combine all that together, you'll know that we're farmer first. You'll know that we're here for you and that we care. And we care about your success, and we want to help you grow your business too. So that's when you see that logo, just know that Fendt's behind that. There's a lot behind it. And to give an example around that, Gold Star warranty, talking about caring, is giving a full 3-year full machine warranty with service and inspections included as part of the standard. It just raises the bar that nobody else is doing out there. When you add all that up, just know that Fendt cares, and we're here for your business.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I have one last question for you. What color is your tractor?
My tractor specifically, it's the Fendt Nature Green with the Terra Red wheels.
Yeah.
That is fun. Yep.
And where can people learn more about Fendt?
Learn more about Fendt at Fendt.com. We've got so many exciting things there. You can tune into the Fendt Lodge on our website. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, And newly launched just last week is the Fendt channel for YouTube. So we've got
Great.
many, many, many videos on YouTube as well. Big channel for us. So continue to watch us. We'll be at all the major farm shows as well too, and a lot more exciting things to come from Fendt.
That's awesome. And thank you so much, Brandon, for joining me today. Great conversation. And I learned a lot that I did not know about Fendt.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I really appreciate it. Great to hear this. I can't wait for the audience members, and just looking forward to your success and here and to learn about the whole industry. So thank you for your time.
Great. And thanks
Yep.
to all who are listening. If you want to learn more, the links are provided in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to What Color Is Your Tractor on Apple and Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Sign up at NorthAmericanAg.com or whatcolorisyourtractor.com to have the latest episode delivered directly to your inbox. And have a great day.